Good morning. Today is the 28th of August. It's a Sunday. Figured I'd attempt to make another video. Who knows who's going to watch it? And in fact, I am months late with this one because I haven't had this for too long. And you might be looking at this asking, well, what exactly is that? This is an Apple M1 MacBook Air. Now, this device has been out since the fall of 2020. In 2021, they released their M1 Pro and M1 Max variants of their 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. There's probably been some iPads, some other iPhones. In fact, the M2 MacBook Air and MacBook Pros came out earlier this year in 2022. So why would somebody want to get an up-to-date review on the device that's almost 2 years old now, as we're approaching the fall, in which in fact, I think the 7th or 8th of September, there's going to be another Apple event. So yeah, this machine is definitely aging by technological standards. But in terms of a performer, it is still doing extremely well. So instead of me just rambling for 15 to 20 minutes, as I sometimes do, I actually took some notes. So I'm proud of myself. First thing I'll say about the machine is, I bought it and I wasn't really sure how I was going to use it. But piece by piece, slowly but surely, things have caught my attention, and I've said, you know what? I actually like that. So the screen is a 13-inch screen. I believe it's 13.3 inches, and it's not the biggest, but it's definitely not the smallest screen you can get on a portable device such as a laptop. But in addition to the size of it being nice, the aspect ratio, I believe, is 16 by 10 or something of the like. It's not the standard 16 by 9, which I've honestly grown a little bit tired of. I thought I really enjoyed that aspect ratio, but as time has gone on, I've learned that I don't need as much horizontal real estate, but more vertical real estate definitely serves purpose. I can see more on the screen where, as if I'm looking at a website or a spreadsheet or something. Seeing more from left to right is nice, I guess, if I'm looking explicitly on how many columns I can see or whatever. But the web pages will render to fit the screen, and the width doesn't really matter. The height, however, does allow you to see a little bit more in a given snapshot compared to the 16 by 9 aspect ratio. But in addition to aspect ratios, which most people probably don't even care about, the display itself is just nice. I mean, you're just looking at one of the default backgrounds that are available in macOS. But when I'm watching videos or when I'm reading text, I actually enjoy looking at this screen. I don't have any complaints about it. I wish I did, because I know if this were a video about the iPhone, I'd have complaint left and right. But no, I really, really, really like this screen. And over here, this is a Lenovo Thinkpad X1 Carbon. It's a 14-inch display. I was a little hesitant to come back down to a 13-inch screen, but that aspect ratio, which I mentioned earlier, really gave me the confidence and a level of enjoyment for a smaller device that I wouldn't get with a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So the screen, top notch, even though this one doesn't have a notch like the newer. So, but you know what I mean. Next thing, oh man, this is really where I wasn't sure. Okay, this, as I mentioned before, is my X1 Carbon. It's the 6th generation, so it's aging. In fact, the 9th, well, no, I think the 10th generation of the X1 Carbon is now available. But I thoroughly enjoyed this machine because of the typing experience. That technically was my second ThinkPad that I ever owned. And for the first one, I don't really think I paid too much attention. It was a lower quality one. I think it was the ThinkPad 13, just one of their budget ThinkPads, I'd say. But the X1 or the X line is definitely their higher end. And the typing experience on that machine is better than probably any other laptop that I've ever used. In fact, I've been attempting to sell that laptop for about a year now, and put it on eBay. I've done the buy it now or best offer, and I've gotten some decent offers in the last year when laptop prices were a lot higher than they needed to be. But right now, yeah, not too many people are biting on it. But I think I'm okay with that because I enjoyed the overall experience of that particular machine. And as I mentioned, the typing experience on that was great. But once I started typing on this MacBook, holy smokes, literally at a loss for words about how good this experience is. And I really want to say the one thing that probably makes the most difference is the fact that even though it sucks for Right to Repair, you're typing directly into the laptop deck. So instead of it being a keyboard that comes out and there's some flex on it, I believe this is all aluminum. So this is rigid and firm right here, and the keys themselves are input into the actual frame of the laptop. So when you bottom out, you bottom out, and it is really, really firm, but it gives you that satisfying typing experience where it's not a mushy experience. I feel that I hit the keys with great accuracy. Also, the keycaps are of really good size for your individual fingers. I mean, I don't think I have overly large hands, but yeah, the typing experience on this is phenomenal. So if you've never typed on a MacBook, and in fact, you know what? Let me caveat that. Let me back up, because 2020 was a pivotal year for Apple, because earlier that year, before the M1s were released, there were some other Intel variants released, and they went from the butterfly keyboard back to a traditional scissor switch keyboard. And yeah, all the problems that they had with the butterfly keyboard disappeared. And yeah, now we're just back to a regular keyboard that you would expect to find on any laptop. There was no reason for them to try to reinvent something that worked perfectly fine. So if you're typing on a laptop that was made between, I think, 2015 and 2019, a MacBook, not any laptop, but a MacBook, you're going to get a different experience. The typing experience on those machines was extremely shallow, and of course problematic as we witnessed for that period of time. But the typing experience on this is absolutely phenomenal, and that transfers to their newer machines as well. So if you're in the market for this particular model or anything new, anything made after 2020, you're good to go. And since we talked about the keyboard, we might as well just come down to the trackpad. It's a haptic trackpad, meaning that it doesn't actually physically click, even though it feels like it. There's a little haptic engine in there, similar to what's in the iPhone, that gives the impression of a click. And in fact, I'm not going to do it now, but like as I'm scrolling around, everything seems fine. Boom! It's so hard to tell that you're not actually clicking, but I'd put like a piece of cloth between my finger and the trackpad, and I attempted to click, and of course nothing happens because it's not able to register my finger when attempting to click. But yeah, the trackpad is great. 3-finger, 2-finger gestures are really nice. I'm not going to swipe anything because I don't know what I have open. But yeah, 2-finger, 3-finger swiping gestures, all that's pretty good. Is really good. Scrolling is really nice. Zooming, pinching, things like that. Absolutely good. So if you're looking for a machine with a good keyboard, with a good trackpad, I don't want to admit it, but I have to. The Mac is a really good product. This is my first true MacBook that I've owned, that I actually purchased with my own money, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. But yeah, I would always see them, and I'd say, you know what, I don't really want them. I don't see the hype. I don't see the appeal. I definitely don't like the price. But yeah, I will definitely say these machines are really, really good machines. Louis Rossmann is a YouTuber that I watch all the time, and he's made a business out of, a very successful business out of repairing MacBooks. And I forget which video I was watching of his, but essentially the core message that I received from his videos is that, yeah, Apple's a terrible company. And actually, I don't want to say that. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the MacBook in particular can be an extremely problematic device, hence his successful business, because he has to repair them. Now, when we were talking about Intel Macs, yeah, it seems to be a lot of problems. He even said, again, in one of the videos, I forget which one, is that for his business, what usually happens is a new Mac is released, and then 2 to 3 years later, he starts seeing the ramifications of the problems that mounted from that particular generation of MacBook. So with the M series MacBooks. These things are approaching 2 years old. So I'll be curious to see if his business for the M series MacBooks is as steady as it was for the Intel-based MacBooks. But so far, I've been thoroughly impressed with it. And of course, longevity is something that we'll have to see. And one thing I'll say, and I know I'm way off topic here, but it's important that, well, Apple's business model, I believe, and you know, talk to somebody who's more knowledgeable about this stuff. Their business model has shifted where, yes, of course, they want to sell you as much hardware as possible. I mean, yeah, what company who is a hardware company wouldn't want to sell you as much hardware as possible? However, the services that they now offer, that aspect or that part of their business has definitely grown. And from my perspective, and I can imagine maybe from their perspective too, their goal is, yes, to sell you some hardware, but to sell you a nice, long-lasting piece of hardware, and maybe some companion devices. You know, if you have a phone, you might get a watch, you might get an iPad. You know, the Mac technically is a standalone device, but you know, you might get something else. You might get an Apple TV. There's some AirPods. You know, all the other things that they offer. But I think what's most important now is that they want to sell you this device, and then they want you to also buy into their services. So even if you bought this device for, you know, the real retail price for it is $1,000, let's say you buy it for $1,000, their goal is to say, well, yes, you paid us that $1,000 that one time for this Mac, but we hope to make that much more or double or triple over the lifespan of that Mac through our services. So if you subscribe to Apple TV Plus, if you Apple Arcade is a thing, you know, there's other things that I don't know how the App Store works on the Mac, but on the phone, if you're doing stuff in the App Store, in-app purchases and things like that, subscriptions. So they're hoping that you will continue to use their device and in turn use their services. And that's where they're really, really hoping to make a bunch more money off of you who purchased one piece of hardware or multiple, again, if you have companion devices, but also spent a lot more money in services over the lifespan of the device. So it's in their best interest, all that to say, it's in their best interest to make the best quality devices that they can, and then hope that you spend money other ways. That's all channeled through the pieces of hardware that you purchased. Cool. So that was really, really a tangent. But all that, good keyboard, good trackpad. Okay, what's the next thing? Oh, all right. Another thing that you'll constantly hear people talk about with these devices, and I know this is boring. If you're looking for a bunch of B-roll and all this other stuff, lights flashing, I'm too lazy for that. Maybe I'm not going to. No. I thought about it briefly, but no, I'm not going to do that. The speakers. So these speakers are really good. And now, I'll say they are laptop speakers, so don't expect magic from them. And I feel some people's expectations when they're reviewing any of these products are far beyond what they should be. These are laptop speakers, just like on the phone. Those are phone speakers. Like you're not going to get groundbreaking audio. Now, there are speakers that are bad, and you'll say, yeah, I don't really like even listening to those, so I always use headphones. Like, for instance, on this X1 Carbon, I don't think those speakers are that great. From the 6th generation to the 7th generation, they made some improvements. They did the little Dolby Atmos thing, and yeah, I've had a 7th generation ThinkPad, and yeah, there was a noticeable difference. And I've had other ThinkPads in my possession that had the Dolby Atmos speaker system, and yes, there was a noticeable difference. So with these speakers, yes, they are laptop speakers, but they are good. I actually do listen to music through these speakers when I'm doing things in my room and I don't feel like putting on headphones. So yeah, if you're looking for a laptop with good sounding speakers, these are good. I would imagine that others who have had experience with any of the Pro devices would say that the Pro speakers are better, and they might be. But, you know, with that comes a greater price and some other things that you might not necessarily need. But yeah, these speakers, from my standpoint as laptop speakers, are really good speakers. The next thing is something that most people probably don't really care about or even realize is an issue until you are able to experience it. But as you may or may not know, this machine is fanless, meaning there is no fan on the inside. It is passively cooled by some copper or something. I don't know. There's a heat sink inside. I'm not going to open it to show you. But instead of it being a fan, which usually dissipates air, sucks some cool air and exhausts some hotter air, or the hot air that's generated by the internal components, there's no fan. So this machine is completely quiet. So combining an SSD, which if you're buying a modern laptop, you're going to have solid state drive, so you don't hear the spinning or clicking of a hard drive anyway. And then combine that with a machine that doesn't have a fan, like you get here. Yeah, this is a completely silent experience. And again, until you experience that, you don't really know how nice it is, where it's almost like looking at your phone, where your phone doesn't have a fan. It's just a completely quiet experience. My roommate, interestingly enough, has a 13-inch MacBook Air that was made in 2020, but early 2020. And those were still Intel machines. And that thing has a fan in it, and it constantly turns on, and it's just loud all the time. She'll just be doing a few things with a couple of tabs open, and that fan is just whipping, and it's loud, and it bothers her. And I said, well, they've made a newer laptop since then. You might want to consider it. And unfortunately, it's kind of a not a brand association, but a product association. She has a MacBook Air. This is a MacBook Air. And I have explained to her that there's no fan in this. So that issue that you have, you will not have, because it just physically is not capable of making that same noise, because that piece of hardware does not exist in it. And I think sometimes she isn't able to completely look past the fact that this too is a MacBook Air and looks exactly like the one that she has. But, we're working on it. And even though, again, that MacBook Air is slow because it's a Intel i3 MacBook Air, this, again, looks exactly the same as yours, but there's a different chip in there. So the performance is drastically different. But it's a MacBook Air. So we go back and forth about it. And I think she's finally settled on probably one of the MacBook Pros. But yeah, don't let previous versions of a MacBook Air dissuade you from getting this machine, because it is definitely worth it. All right, so good speakers, fanless. The next thing that you may or may not care about, and I'm going to close this just that way I can show you. But I remember back in 2015, it might have been 16 actually, I was all about new ports. Like, oh man, what's the next thing that's around the corner, the next popular port. And this was before I had a MacBook or anything. But I had I purchased a Sony Xperia X Compact, and I was like, I want a Android device that has a USB-C port. And granted, yeah, that was back in 2016. I remember, because I just moved into a new place. And I was excited about it, and, stupid stuff like, oh, you can plug it in and both ways, and it doesn't, you can go either way. It doesn't matter. And, back then, I think that phone had a USB 2.0 port, even though it was USB-C. So, data transfer speeds weren't drastically improved, nor was I really transferring that much stuff at the time anyway. So it doesn't matter. But bringing that up, simply because this laptop only has 3 ports. So on this side, we have 2 USB-C ports, and I believe both of them are Thunderbolt 3, meaning you can, transfer stuff, maybe connect an external dock, definitely an external dock, but I think some people might try to connect an external GPU. Doing that on a MacBook Air, I don't know if many people are attempting to do that, but Thunderbolt gives you a bunch of options. Multiple displays. I think natively you can only have one external display, but if you use like a Thunderbolt hub, that might give you some additional options. So watch other YouTubers, they'll be able to expand all that for you. But nice. Yeah, you can charge the laptop with both ports. Video out is how I use it, charging and video out. Those are the only 2 things that I've actually used these ports for. And in fact, there's my monitor right there. And then on the other side, all you have is a headphone jack, which is good to see that it still exists, because on phones, they do not exist. So, or a lot of phones, they do not exist. So it's good to see that Apple and other manufacturers are keeping it. I don't know if it was Dell or, some company recently did remove a headphone jack from a laptop, and it's just like, why? I mean, yeah, why would you do that? So how popular is the port store? I don't know if you're able to collect that metric from the operating system through telemetry. I mean, you might be able to, but since it's an analog port, are you able to tell how many people are plugging in and out? Like with the USB-C port, yeah, I'm pretty confident they're able to track those metrics. But yeah, I use it still, and the main reason I use it, in fact, let me not knock over my camera right here. But these, these are Apple EarPods. So not AirPods, EarPods. So they changed the shape of these little guys some time ago. And in fact, just to show you how old these are, these still have the 3.5mm jack. So plug it in and it works perfectly fine. This is an Apple branded dongle. So USB-C on one side. Where are the cameras? The cameras over here? Yeah. And then the 3.5mm input on that end. So you plug it in, and I frequently just leave them attached because a lot of devices that I have USB-C on it. So it's fairly simple to keep things like that. But unfortunately, fortunately, the audio out is usually fine. So I'll plug it in, and the audio out is fine. You know, I can hear, and it's not a problem. But while using this dongle, whether it's been on this Mac, this ThinkPad, my Sony Xperia, another ThinkPad, and probably some other devices, people always have a hard time hearing me through the built-in microphone on these headphones when I have this dongle attached. So I'll unplug it and just plug it directly into the Mac, and then people are able to hear me just fine. So these things aren't great. And even though I really want to enjoy and use USB-C for a lot of things, there still are some issues. And at the end of the day, I think it just boils down to, yeah, we could spend a lot of R&D trying to improve the overall experience of these things, but we just want you to buy our Bluetooth headphones. And they're way more expensive, and the battery in them dies, and you'll lose them, you'll get them wet, you'll have to buy more, so forth and so forth. So from a business standpoint, there's no reason for them to invest in these things to make the overall experience better, because every device that would allow you to use this thing, I can imagine also has a Bluetooth radio. And if they have a Bluetooth radio, then just go ahead and buy some Bluetooth headphones. Voila. Simple, simple, simple. So this video is getting kind of long, and I will come back with my part 2 of this video in a little bit. So thank you for listening so far. And yeah, if I could just recap real quick on what I've covered so far. The screen on this is really good. The typing experience is really good. The trackpad is good. The speakers are good. It has a fanless design. USB-C, which for me fits right into the rest of my own ecosystem. And yeah, it just works with the exception of this little guy. So it's nice that it exists. It's unfortunate that it has to exist. But for devices like this that still maintain the headphone jack on it, it's easy for me to use the dongle on smartphones that don't have headphone jacks, but then easy for me to just go ahead and pop it off and use this plug whenever I need to on devices that allow me to do so. So on that, I will cut this video off right here, and I'll come back a little bit later with my part 2 of why I think you should still consider this machine, even though it's almost 2 years old now.